예, 당도 군용 공시자고 군용 공대다 한당도 강 추니야 돼. 니 남부선지 왜 추기 닝보라고 지래. 담바 시세야 돼. 추그 좀시라고 지래. 예나네니 좀 좀인데 담불링들 통마송배 최진다. 최배미시 다치 뭐 쉬우지래. 제단이나 근데 최대 니야 돼. 고급상부인다데 라니 지구체도 많이 봐봐. 타입에 심지 탐제라 편바 바식 두야치 등에 아니 저의 인기 삼백군로 신변지 군로 야고지 제쇼스로
Assuming the correct intention that one will listen to this Dharma, which is the essence of Buddha Dharma, and that is the very foundation or basis. Being the first teaching that was ever given in this world, it is precious. It is, in that context, good that we have this opportunity to hear it. So then in that context, think that this is not just for you, but for all sentient beings. Cultivate this beneficial intention before listening to the teaching.
예, 다 가와 검로 드링으로 니 딘데게 담배 송배 추 다시 무슨 데지 인기 총어디 겨우 상부이 진짜 가와 공부했어.
Rejoicing that the chance to listen to this Dharma from Shakyamuni Buddha, Buddha Dharma, hearing that is precious, rejoicing in that opportunity.
예, 당저 단다 딘시 키싱네 딘시 기저셔야디 니 냠렌지를 배운신 시기 어레스로 등산 미망고지기 딘시 냠렌디 딘시 셔야디 지 아카데믹 소라질라 기저시 냠렌시 오레스도 인지민지 nga tharo chi pomjaro chi mendarao chi tsega du yo resro mone chena nyamle ngone gi nyamle rimba tanda nganze chumdende gi tanda nganzo dungye damba thangbo sheya di dimba shina ni dungye damba thangbo sheya du sama nyamle gi rimba on chene ni shegi yo resro
So we looked last week at the Four Noble Truths in the context of practice. There is a tendency these days for people to approach the Four Noble Truths from an academic perspective. And they might set out to do meditation and mantras, but actually the real practice would be to begin with the reality of the truth of suffering and take it from there.
Dishi Shedan de la Rimba Ni Yorwa, Junde Rimba Chidi, Nguyen Jedang Rimba Chena, Gunjung de Mangila Che, Tungi de Bachil Shegor, Kazan, Jungela Je, Jil Chigorwa, Kazana, Ju, Dungegi, Anzu Penanganzu Ludendi, Dunge de Maridera, Di Ju, Leda Numont in the Chungre Labdi, Tango Gunjung de Bashe, Jins Tungi de Bashe, the Junde Rimba, Tima Sheviche, Tango Dunge de Bashe, to Shedan.
So, in terms of the order that they occur, is as a kind of like a process of cause and effect, if you will. We look at the cause and effect. So actually, the true sufferings, which are the result, are caused by true origins on a cause and effect level. So if we take the example of our bodies, that's an example of true suffering. But the cause of it is karma and disturbing emotions. So that's how it takes place in reality. However, we look at the result first, true sufferings.
And Pename member jigi, any never la taji do Tambo Naza Shivachi, Naza di Paredo, Naza di Shivachi, Naza Shivachi, and Nazagi Judy, any Panya do Mido Taji Chigua, teach any Naza di dan Cheve, Naza di Naza de Cheve, never Kazu Yudame, Naza de Cheve Cheva, Naza Meva Cha Yudame. 다 나자 매워 차야디 네 맨 가르다는 나자 매워 차도스 다 둑스 멤버지 네발라 다제시나 규림디 누구 여러 와서와
It is similar to a doctor when analyzing a patient's illness from the causal nature of that illness. Can the illness be healed or not? And can the patient be healed? And then secondly, if so, what medicine needs to be dispensed? It is similar to that.
이제 참고공부 줄라면은 예 직대하고 쉬어라
요리.
내니 시자스러와 내니 시자 내기 균이 빵잘라스러와 내니 시자 내기 균이 빵잘라스 디네 톱자 메네 템바 차와다 둥에 주다 되고 받은 디신람 시자 반자 리바체시 템바차스 어디 내니 시자스라윈데 먼저 당보 내니 시바차와 되나신 아니 동의 시에브레스로와 동의 시에브레스 아니 내게 주방자 시에와 멤버게 내게 주방자 요는 동의기 주군중 방야 방배 방바 군중 방교에 다제 쳐브레스 다 내내 톱자 시디 톱자 아니 내단 제베 네와디 나자단 제베 저와 예메 예네 예나 아니 데 브랑도 되나신 아니 군중 방배 방바 곡데 유명한 다제 치그레스와 나자디 맨든데지 세네 맨든데지 당제체네 나자 타샤스 레버드나시 네 람데 냠슬람발데네 네 고과시와 톱자 냠슬랭그레스엔디 디시기 단다 셰야가 냠랭 림바디 냠랭랑 그림바와 냠슬랭다 그림바라레다 눈에 제는 뒤유 최 같제 냠랭 남바산제베 최 컨제지 냠 도미시 데나라 도구여 차단을 봐 차단 데나라 도구여다
As stated by the protector Maitreya in Uttara Tantra, just as the nature of illness is to be recognized and their causes abandoned, wellness is to be actualized and therefore medicine is to be relied upon. Here, similar to the Four Noble Truths, first the illness has to be recognized vis-a-vis true sufferings, and then the cause abandoned. The cause of that illness needs to be abandoned, which is true origins. And then how does one get to that state of healing? By abandoning the cause. It is seeing whether the sickness can be healed or not. Is true cessation possible or not? And then in that light, applying the correct true path to get to that true cessation with the medicine. Now, when we think about this analogy of the doctor healing the patient and the Four Noble Truths. All of Buddha's teachings are set out like this in terms of the Four Noble Truths. The way that we practice all Buddha Dharma is like that. No.
그래서 뒤인데 당저 기생의 동해 템바 신앙에 아니 동해 템바다 군전 템바데 코와라 아 주베리 마시고 남바선 제베 코르바스니 시기로 먼저 단다 깨와디 먼저 깨와지도 깨와딜레 깨와딜라 다추 마체베체 지단게 레가로 체로 알라젤네 네 강바자 창사제 부구지 와 네 양자 디보 망보사 로 디보사 우도 아니 시스나나 다 겨와데 사이네 밀레 겨랭 거래 겨와데 마스나 튼둘레 겨랭 거래 안 튼둘레 겨랭 튼둘라 미게베 렉 데비 차단 조스나나 아니 신도 겨월 하딘 저디 미운데 아니 신도 덴돌레야 겨랭 툭스체네 겨와데라다 거르제제 데야데라 코르바스 시기로 코르바스나 디라 림바데라 아니 규직단 대위직 규군중 된바단 대우독된 스탠드 대우독된 배디 탄당한도 대우독된 상한도 류된 다라래 봐 미세 틱디 코코고를 찾는 류된 다라래 다라
And last week we talked about, in context of the Four Noble Truths, the cycle of existence, samsaric cycle. In terms of true sufferings and true origins, how we enter into that cycle in the context of this life, how does it happen? First, we might not have come across Dharma, or we work for wages, do a job and then get involved with partners, have a family and kids, and we can go about that process until our death. Sometimes in that context, creating non-virtue. And if that's the case, then it's possible to have the rebirth as an animal or a virtuous human. Anyway, in some cases, when the rebirth is non-virtuous, and one is in the lower migrations like an animal, then eventually when that karma is exhausted, again, one can be born in the upper realm. And like this, we cycle. And the true suffering or resultant state, which is our very bodies, although it might be difficult in terms of the way it's explained with words, quite simply, the resultant state is our very bodies, and the cause is true origins.
자, 우연히다 메시 왕게 강연 쉽지 연대기 요인자 뇌뇌 주디 가래 동해 시고래서 동해 된바 셔야 되라 아니 뇌 동해 된바 되라 뇌 직된다 주의 심제스 니샤로 뇌 직된데도 강바다 리라와도 조상마 동해 된바 켈렌 치고요래와 뇌 직된 주의 심제스 뇌 직된도 동해 된바 인다 메가라 제주 시오지 전에 시오 펜도스케요 말해라. 로야.
So then, this first reality then is to understand that we are in that state of dissatisfaction and suffering, to know true suffering, and that it is qualified by these two that we've mentioned, the vessel-like world and the content-like sentient beings, without knowing the deeper workings of that. What would be the point of studying the world?
Yes,
knowing the universe, not such a big deal.
Know
or not know, what would that benefit?
동해 두고요 말아라. 세상은 류덴디덴라 동해 먹으시죠. 류덴 코란게 라진이 카레스 류데 동해 시월 차 좀된데 제가 내내 시월 차선 동해 시월 차 좀내데 점블링데라 통마 추스는데 동해 시월 차 송도 알아. 말아야 주류덴야 동이 도송 내가 남게 도고 통보니 송 등아베 아니 류 자류 톱송 류 주류덴 신기요. 근데 숨은 알아. 동해 시월에 신을 송도 알아. 당하지 뭐 시월에 가들.
So in that context, in terms of knowing what is important to know is the reality of our situation, the reality of our body. It is a body that experiences feelings of happiness and sadness, and it's the case that no one wants to suffer. So therefore, what's the body's nature? What's its entity? Here, this is why Buddha said first, no suffering. Buddha didn't first say, oh, these are miracles. You know, I can perform miracles. I can show the lack of intrinsic nature, emptiness. I can like exhibit the rainbow body. These were not things the Buddha first taught. The first thing he uttered was no suffering. And if we take that, that's really great advice, good advice.
제가 다 대신하랑도 두유 전번여샤시는 이 류전번여샤 세죠. 네 검디 자워 류란신라 따와스. 류 전번여샤들 류랑이 올라 따와라. 류랑이 지신이 따와스. 랑신이 따와다 지신이 따와세. 네 대진이샤게요로.
In that context, then, this first close placement of mindfulness amongst the four on the body. First, we want to know, okay, so what's the nature, what's the entity of the body? We need to know its general and specific characteristics.
그래서 등산야 전반에 샤라윈디야 룰 따제베 이후도는 시라지. 근데 상로 말해. 전반에 샤서야 돼. 저는 전반에 샤 셔럽데 손도. 전반에 샤데 야면은 전바 야면은 셔럽 만자 셔럽고 차도 전반에 샤 셔럽 셔럽고 차라도 룰랑기 친이 신이데 셔럽로. 류지 친이 지친이데 가라서는 류랑 친이데 간도 류랑이 오데 샤단 루바다 파과다 주바다 텐데게 네 툭tin 줘줘와 류랑이 오데래 되라 아 지친이데 류미다과데 류미다고라 지친이라고 해준데 가라서나 미다과데 류제 미다고래 대게 미다고래 법에 미다고래 뒤제 탐제를 캡을 미다고래 되라 이제는 찌라고 해야 돼 미다과데 지친이라고 해서나 미다과데 류지고 많이 배 최신의 캡되어 인상 그 제단 지친이 랑친이스도 류 먼저 샤단 루바다 빠바다 디제르도 류를 메시지게 포바다 포바다 샤단 루바 빠고 민도 알아 그런 란징 올라다 지친이다 대 여와체도 상황 셔럽지 쳐고로 와 제단 류 란지 저만이 샤신 다윤도 랑징 오 류랑 올다 지친이 따제 셔럽지 쳐 네 류라 네 심에가네 셔럽지 차다 제산디 제금 제조 송지스로 지와 제금 님도 유된 요지 시기요라
These days, people might take that close placement of mindfulness of body and think it means to be dull and have a bit of a rest and a sleep. But actually, when you really understand the definition of close placement of mindfulness of body, as is set forth in Abhidharma, we're doing two things. We are recalling its nature with a strong recollective mind or mindfulness, but we're also using wisdom. How? Well, we're defining the body's entity and we're defining its general and specific characteristics. So, you know, we know that it's made up of flesh, blood, bones, and so forth. But, you know, there's a more general kind of nature of the body, which is the fact that it is impermanent and disintegrating moment by moment. So we can see this as a general definition of body because we can apply it to other things, not just body, such as books, cups, and so forth. All compounds are by nature impermanent. So what then are the specific characteristics of body? That a body has flesh, bones, sinews, bloods, and so forth. So here we can see that with close placement of mindfulness on body, two things are taking place. There's a placement here, a single-pointed nature, but also an insight, a kind of checking analytical meditation with wisdom.
제가 다 이승원도 drop the share 류디 아니 미다베란 신이라 단도 동해된 발라 제주 시셔고요와 미다 동해 동안 담에 있지 제주시 디시미다서 주룩시 denpa shi de ma yawa che chuduk yawa chuduk yela do chuduk kan samda yore an de la thangbo zo dungye denpa lu de ran ta yonde zo mida warwa lu de ran shin de a danda dubjo de she sha na khode ya thangbo ro duba de je an je la ka jo de je la she sha na ya wo thangbo lu mida warre sirwa lu de mida waran shi re she mo do.
So then we're really looking at, for example, body's impermanent nature. And last week we touched on that each of the four truths has four aspects or attributes to it. With regards to true sufferings, they were impermanence, suffering, emptiness, and selflessness. And these 16 aspects, if we look at the first aspect for true suffering or body, it is its impermanent nature. So we look at these first in terms of what we're establishing, not what we're negating, which will come later.
So midawadela da design yawa ni chore yawa ni ro midawadela. Rakwadang tamus ro.
So then if we look at impermanence itself, there are two divisions, isn't it? Gross and subtle impermanence.
First,
we're going to reflect or meditate on the gross level of impermanence.
Ragwe midawa de ngonzo ngusum tonggo ra ane midu zo midinde ya je ni ye genjik che shi meba cha do da mi shi do yo zo ngusum tonggo da ra je chiwo midawa sa de na lamrin nam ji komya ge chiwo midawa de midawa ra wa re de pom de ora ngone shi na sam dang de ora mi ngusum de nyong go ye za gyumjen shi da sam dang ma ro ko mi shi wa ngusum tonggo da ra 예, ngānzu ngūsum tōne ngānzu tanda yīzhe chīgā mā ngānzu sī chakbo shīvji dēdē.
So that gross impermanence, illustrating that, houses fall, flowers fade, they're produced and fade away, trees, leaves fall off them, products are produced and disintegrate. And even humans grow up and die. And in the context of Lam Rim, of course, there is this meditation on death and impermanence, but really, you know, these are things we directly see people passing away. And even though we see people passing away, we still don't get it, how hard our minds are.
아니, 제니, 제가 주고 시야래 소래. 제가 타마 시주래 소래.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
as is said, all birth ends in death. The moment something is born, death is on the way. It started, isn't it?
And then Duje on the Teve Tama Tevis on the Tobotomo. The Pama Binja to Tuguda. Two years around a chair goes to time.
It's the nature of compounds that meeting ends in parting, friends, families. The moment you've met, you've parted.
And it's stuck with Tama Zeva incident. Duje no Pesha sa to my young said to the Zoruda, Yugi Mevchadoda, and Kangaraji Jamna, which I Mevchadodo. That go to Lord of Gine, the Royako, Jig, Savaraj News and Yan, collect Mevacha. No master Jalashu, Kawish and the Convagile, Gawmin Chadudara. To the Tama Duje Midawa and she think Yara.
And those things that are gathered together disperse, the new becomes old, new houses become old, clothes fade, things like this. So these are all examples of Duce Tamshi Mitakbar. All compound things are impermanent.
And Yajik Tamyanda Tomboro, Geta Chimuro Chavin, Yamasa Iris, Chupuchana, Banguchare, Geta Chumuchana, Nimaji, Geta Mevachadre, Toboya Tamji, Ya, Susaneta, Yaworo Chana, Yan, Nimaji, Mevachadori, Mevachani, Yovachari, Yovachani, the Mevachari, Children Dujela, the Edens K. Omaroko, Chesango, Ati midagwa ranshi tingu yoro, yuwadwe ranshi tingu yoro, to samro.
And similarly, those that are famous one day become not famous, or wealth can become poor. The wealthy can become poor. Those that have a name can lose it. So the haves become have-nots, and the have-not become haves. And this really is the compound nature of things. There is no certainty.
그래서 다 midagwa rakwa 지고 samlo dami ne ngaranzo choyenang 동해 망고 쉬우지 midagwa rakwa de shemini choyenang 동해 망고 쉬우지 세투고 요래데 고 암조 고자마인 바니 소소 초응어 samlo dam 투베이나 저랑들라 편도 제제 자요래 람지 미직 수주 당부 가원 이후로 차야데 카테 동해 쇼용고도 오케이 아무래 코드란시레 이머직 텐데 델레하고 이머지 시야를 텐시다니 개개 염을 가래 단다 카테나 델레하고 아시고리로 시둥에 수부대 샤도 다 개민도 선자를 삼단 이 카다 염말에 수수직 재와인이 된데 말아서 답변 단인도 있는 아자 통시들 심나 강의 연구도 알아 인데로 상단 다데다 아자를 나래 수부대 샤다 야냐 수수지 레저 서버이나 코야 겨제마 투용고라로 겨와 제마 투야 삼다나 네고 심대 치고 스케면도 시행도 심대 용구로 와서 제와 유니 당수서 원에게 제와 유니 미드 카테드 심나 마주 용구도 제단디인데 남배게 추게 디 삼다연데 아니고 제와로 등원에 유나 지금에 제와 유나 투 용구도 하고로 가와 대위는 배낭하랑서 그러나 제사 별게래 자갈 때래 양한서 대 투대도 뉴질랜드라 투대도 찬자로 만나서 지금 레더지 얘기로 근데 투용거다라 제사 되나시 그 지금 레게 더러나 투용거라고 봐 이렇게 양상상라 지 가로 대화다는데 시 semma 지오로는데 여 가둘라야고 삼로든데 담배네 그 저 년바데 수수심기 디기 마두기야다 디기 공배다야는 간라 배전적으로 좋게 지셔야 돼 디니간 배전적으로 대 중나 안에다 딜럽 수핑기도나 대충 개외신이래로 미 신다지 간대지게 니 개와시 삼로게제시니 수수심을 개와마두바당 개와라 공배두고도나 디미디 개외신이네 레다 지나로 이제 민충보다 깨다 전부인데 펜배 겨요 말은 그래서 틸레니 미드 계자지 시에는 수수 개와 공배도야 심기 니 개와 마두기야 된데라 미 핀도 진이디 뭐네게 개외신이 데려와
It's very important for us then, in the context of this life, to know what we are going through in terms of dissatisfactions and sufferings, and be able to have the ability to remove them. And then this contemplation on gross suffering, 100% on gross impermanence, will help this. So, because if you know this, that every time you meet certain people, you'll know that, well, ultimately you'll have to leave them, and it will end in parting, separation, and of course the ultimate separation is death, when one can't even take one's own body with one. So what then would be the point of clinging too strongly to partners and friends? You know, the suffering is there. When my sister passed away recently, there was suffering, but because of the recognition of the law of behavioral cause and effect and the notion of love we had in the context of future lives, why worry? There is a strong conjunct that you'll meet again. And if you do have this affection for loved ones in the context of Buddha Dharma, if it's real love, of course, you can meet again. And then, you know, look at me. I was in Tibet, in India, then I'm in New Zealand. Strange. So somehow we have the karma to meet. You know, so, but, and in that context, why should there be so much suffering of separation if you really know the law of karma, cause and effect, and how it works? In that context, it is the spiritual friend's job that if you want to eliminate the state of dissatisfaction and not being happy and increase happiness, then the spiritual friend is the one who really shows one how to do that in terms of Dharma, how to do that in terms of Dharma. And if the spiritual friend benefits you in that regard, that's the point.
어디지? 당도 미다고 참을라야지. 아니 미다고 참고 또 또야라. 대 줌제도는 미지 삼단도 말해라.
Yeah. There. So in terms of subtle impermanence and reversing it, then we begin to think about, these subtle particles and things.
배나 탭디 미다고래스 기로와.
Yeah.
아니 미다고 임베 줌제 거라잖아. 깨지기 직도 그래서와. 깨지 라운드에 뒤니와 두고 말해서와. 미드웨 진지디 깨버려서 라시아나. 줌제인데 야고야래 깨봐. 깨와디 깨지 깨도도 알아.
So now we look at the book. The reason the book is subtly changing every moment. It doesn't even stay this second moment, doesn't abide, because it's a product.
먼저 미다고 참모된 무슨지 통고 말해 줌제 상담을 싫어.
Yeah, and that, that subtle impermanence we can't see directly. We have to use inference or logic to connect that.
대리 상황도 셔버지어라. 셔버디 내가 지야디 빼 태고 싶지래도 다른 것이 제라. 뭐 내주 조금 신토고요 말아. 이거도 충전. 아니 셔버디 뉴버디야 처러처러처러데 네 유진야디 숙처러처러처러도 아니 주주 춘주이들 남상 하고도 요인다. 아니 파고가 내가라 미다고 참모도 그래라데 심디 뉴버 첨부 쇼차데윈자. 아니 뭐그 란신 춘주 주주들 남상 주토고요. 먼저 깨진 못 남기요래. 깨진 못 남기요. 나니 녜두고요 말. 먼저 남기요. 상황 먼저 셔발은 남거로 와. 나오래데 주주 적다 쉬제. 먼저 신두고요. 먼저 셔바디 빼데. 쇼 잡라 데데. 다간데 빼 슬로우 모션도 데데. 코페 쇼지 스피드 고라. 이 스피드 데네 가서 칼레라 진데 고라. 데 셔바 뉴버데 토데라. 딘데로 인사랑이 내가 섬는 단다로 셔네로.
I think in terms of subtle impermanence, our minds are like working in slow motion, and we are really scattered. It's almost like the distance between the consciousness and the object is far, and our potency is very small. But if you're an Arya being, you can, because the potency of your mind is very powerful, very potent, you can see subtle impermanence. Okay, so things still appear to our consciousness, but it's like we're in slow motion and our perception is scattered. Yeah, sorry. The potency of our perception is scattered.
제가 곰잡인데 아니 싱글 뉴버드 추루는 아니 곰잡니 첨바대로 줘야 당 아니 미디지 로도 쳐로 줘야 당 진짜 내가 가르치는 야구 차야 돼 세부 차야 돼 가서는 그 싱글 뉴버드 추 뉴버드 쳐로 두고 있으라라 곰잡야 돼.
So when you meditate, you bring that potency in. It's brought in, it's focused in, you condense it. So your mental recall or stable recall is powerful.
아니 델라 추주 깨징마데 추주를 따나야 거라 추주도 스코르자 데 세컨 투터탁직 로다 딜레장 타와지여라다 딜레장 타와시 거라 디탄다 메 타슈 탁탁탁 스틱 건지지 고다 딜레장 타와게 타외 뒤지 시게여라다 단단도 자도 자와직 고좀 자와직 조베 깨지겠냐래 뭐도 나야도 상황 암조 거야 되래 이나 깨지마 타모도 암조라 디 유튜브에 말하는데 나시 년제디 하자 우선나는 왜 라고도 좀 유튜브가 말아 그래서 투즈를 따위나 아니 투 참으셔야 돼 샤트야 그 등산이나 모던 게 단다디 미설인데 땅도 알아 근데 먼저 투즈 세컨 찍나라 저 망보도 두고도 알아 투즈 쉬지 킬로미터 쉬지 죽도도 알아 이 스피드 직체를 가운데 이게 미다고 참모데 대회장 타오래.
Alealos.
근데 지리고에 미다고 참모 제도고요 말이야. 가지 세잖아요. 제도하고는 요 말이야.
So it is good to look at time as an example of subtle impermanence, like the tick-tock of a clock. And, well, actually, subtle impermanence is much more subtle than that, than those seconds. And for example, when an action is done, that's kind of gross. And if you listen to sound, our air consciousness is unable to process subtlety of subtle impermanence with regards to sound. But with time, it might be better to examine. Let's look at something like a missile, which can travel extremely fast. However, subtle impermanence is yet more subtle than that. And I don't think scientists have yet measured it or can.
제가 다디인데 한다 미다고디 라운드베 튜니와 미도가 되려다 한다. 되게 없는다.
Okay, so that type of impermanence doesn't stay still for an instant, second moment, not even a bite.
세상 어느 저다 류디 미다고라는 시리에서 되는 류디 세상 류디 딱과 진배 왕기 언도 동에 모시 좀 거라 류디 지가 매와 류디 오메 류나시 인텐데 언도 류라 녀마든데 레운디 밥 동들 녀마든데 레운디 마지 용구다 가르스나 언도 단지요라 스승님아 친주기 대 인텐게요라
Yeah.
말아 가나 지 란신디 녀마 인제데 딱 미다고라는 시리에 딱 요도고요래서 그다 뇌len시잖아 아니 동해도 근데 밀 개베 동해도 숙천부 연구여러 밀 개베 동해서 하더라 개베 동해서 하더니 아니 야 나저 개운데 잘라자마도 아니 다 하고도 로중화도 저게 튼중시로 아니 모터 단데 모터 칼레드나 다디 미겐거래 람사 모터 칼레드는 미겐거래 라기도 하잖아 미버르베 튼중시에 동해지 여러 미버르지 아니 계절 이지 마체로 계절 이지 마체에 동해시로도 와라 제가 안디 페 로미 남미로 단제다 베 유즈레스로 레도도 셰운데 아니 미베데 셈 나마지에 동해시오지 써요 거로
겐고요 데제
제가 먼저 드즈 삼시 지고라 상당고로
And a lot of our suffering occurs just on this level of not knowing subtle impermanence of body, grasping at you, self-thinking that you're the same person that you were before, it's the same, and when the wrinkles come, it's like that. And then, you might think you're the same person that you were when you were young even, but your nature is impermanent. So, and also particularly in the humans world, we experience the suffering of aging a lot. Sometimes young people look down on old people when they come up behind them and they're driving. They say, oh, they're old, they're driving old, or they don't believe their speech. And they think, oh, old people are useless. That is sad, isn't it? And it's good to do these reflections with concern and love.
배배지도는 경고라 통시부죠. 경고라나 experience 시우연 요로 스티제로 경고게 아니면 시우연 돈도라지. 로충은 경고는 매제 냠뇨망고 요인자. 먼저 랍젤렌서레스디 베 respect 시우지요로. 먼저 누셔지도는 디미도아. 디베 셈바죠로죠. 디 딩원에 배틀로 와르셔디. 그런도 배배지도는 주다 경고라 근데 가시 요래다.
생상딜에
요래데 만차게 경고를 빼 구십당 그거나 내가 망부체 냠뇨 망고요 요 미지레 삼제 빼 삼단단데 빼거나 이 낭미 땅야당 부신 타운시아로 근데 요 말이에요. 너 빼 디즈네 주 랍젤레야를 배전치 그래 봐. 주 직롭종 레야를 배전치 그래 봐. 롭종 쇼요라 냠뇨 쇼요라 이거 지 총총 냠뇨이나 릴레이션십 냠뇨이나 아니 칼라서다 카레이나다고 냠뇨 체지 로 전부 쳐야 돼. 지깔에 지 태기 딜라 동네 지기 전에 로침부터인데 또 레나오요 말아라 Chezan dezo veluzidan dezo pe logare do ndu chezan ndu degi kingola pe dunge ti töbre do wa ndu pe nangme do tang do wa ti nangme shu tang do tida yengana zo ta tangyu yo marang ndu chile yo lo cha ro zola bishop che wa ya go je bi pe ti bishop che go ya dang ni ji pe geja dang zo la thona che go ya dang 지금 미지인배 뒤지셔야다. 수술을 걸린 친구인배 뒤지셔야다. 그래서 오늘 처음으로 나는 냠내 지하로 한거로.
In often cases in Tibet, we will look at elderly people as people who have experience and wisdom. The younger people, and they often themselves think, I'm old, I have experience, and so forth. So then you have the young ones looking up to the elders who have that wisdom. That's kind of common in Tibetan culture. In the West, sadly, it is sometimes opposite to that. You know, although some people here have respect for elders, that's not always the case. But actually, if you think about what the old people have done to get there, as in to be old, they've had to work and get to that by putting up with a lot of difficult conditions and had to bear lots of things to get old. So, for example, some of them have studied a lot and know a lot. Some of them have experience in business. Some of them have experience in relationships. Some of them have experience in cooking. So they got they got old. They got old through a lot of effort. So that, you know, there's a value there. But where do we have that value here in this culture? So we should never, you know, look down on elderly. When we meet them, we should respect them and speak nicely to them. And actually, that should be our this life practice.
I had this experience. I learned how to cook in one odd man's home. We in monastery, sometimes we need routine class. Sometimes need to cook, you know, once a year. On holiday time, making money and offering for Sarah monk. And then we took restaurant 2 weeks, 1 week, some classes. And we don't know how to cook, you know. Nobody know how to, you know, need a restaurant cooks, need publisher, you know, other things. And we especially we make some buffet making money, you know. And then we don't know how to making this, you know, lots of good food, you know. And then there one his father retired for chef, for 5-star chef, retired. But he drink lots of alcohol, you know. And if we give him some alcohol, and he accept how to cook, you know, cooking. And then me in our class captain Sora, we went and offering him some one, and then give him, please, we need help from you, for you, you know. And he said, oh, it's good, I can help you, you know. And he gives some list, you know, how many people, what kind of food you want to pass, top one or medium or low, you know, good quality. And we say we need medium. And then how many people, and he measured, he give lots of shopping list. He's coming tomorrow. Day after tomorrow we have party tomorrow. So he said, today you can shopping, tomorrow I come. And then amazing, he preparation, you know, preparation, very relaxed, you know, so preparation, cutting, everything's live there. And then tomorrow, you know, we have this party is 5 o'clock, and here everything's prepared. And 3 o'clock, he still no cooking. 3:30, he still no cooking. He just stay drinking alcohol, talking, and he making tea for us. Just doing tea, be relaxed, you know. We lost, you know. People coming, don't worry. And some people have lots of panic, you know. People coming, right, you know. and then he said, slow down, you know. And then and then 4:15, and then he started fire. And he cooked 45 minutes, all cooked. And all food is fresh there, warm, you know. It's amazing, you know. Oh, looks magic, you know. Just 45 minutes, he cooks 500 people's food. We have 500 people. Prepare very well before, you know. He said this part, this thing. He said, just drink tea, relax, relax. I can't believe experience, you know, experience. This reason people has a value, you know. And I learned lots that time how to cook lots. You know. Today, watching how to I'm his right hand. He said, Chamba do that, Chamba do that, you know. And then how to make noodle, how to make dumpling, how to make this, how to make roast. Oh, yummy roast. And palak pani. I learned how to make palak pani. Yeah. And fried rice, how to make chow mein. He just cook 45 minutes, everything. Wow, amazing. Yesterday, remember this, he's, you know, he's very big. He's at that time, he is 81. He was 81. He is lots talking, you know, laughing, talking, joking, you know. And so funny. 지금 저 미신이 있는 장야도 와로. 냠뇨 연진에 장야 먹고 요래로.
There's something to learn from people that are accomplished.
미다고 왔을 때라 아니 어두스라 왜 미다고 삼다 아니 타외 미다고 삼다 다 칭어고 주어도 삼다 아니 수수루 주어도 삼다 아니 심 주어도 삼다 아니 제 대둑인데 말아서 저 대화다 저 동네 상황 예행게 미당 직 대화 야고 요마에 직다 직 근데 지간에 심지 연구도 알아 대화 야고 요나 아니 테스트 유로 대화 야고 맨에 주네 연구도 나도 상황에 미다고란 시리로 그래서 데 로종 천자계지나 또 상황 아마 겨왕 아마 수수 랭이 매치베 테이블에 상당하잖아. 야고도 알아. 근데 상당히도 와.
Then one can reflect on the grosser levels of impermanence and the subtle ones. One can reflect on the workings of outer things, compound things. You can think on your body, you can think on your mind's impermanence. You can think on how from time to time you feel good and then you feel not so good, and how there are dissatisfactions there, but also how feeling good or not so good is dependent on those that are directly around you. If the connections you're making are good, it buoys you up. But it's also good to remember that these are also impermanent, and similar to wheeled weapon mind training, when difficulties come up like that, it is good to reflect that this is the maturation of karmic things that I've done in the past returning.
다디 미다와 류디 미다와레스 다 체주니와디 류디 동해바라시레스 동해시오레스 라우라
Now,
동해바라시레스 니와디.
so if we know then that first attribute of body is its impermanence, the second is that it's in the nature of suffering.
다 동해들라 니 동해 숨셰저 동해 교회 동해서 대단 텐데 대상 말에 대 단다딩은 낭배셰 동해서야데 아니 동해 숨그는 게 잡아두지 동해서야 돼요. 그래서 동해 숨셰는데 아니 교회 동해서도 먼저 지 단다 지 저거를 시도 되나 아니 칼라스도 심으셔도 알아. 근데 심무 망고 sana 거의 단기 되어도 교르제 아니 동해고 교르거다. 아니 지 둘로 시비 차스나나 아니 둘로지 건도 때스 시다라고 단직도 기우도 야 망고다는 야 차지 권나도 알아. 그 교르도 하고 그거 대화 임베다 단다베나 사제기 대화 상마도 유외 동의 얘냐래. 사제기 대화 베나 그 신내도 신내데 교르도 거요. 그 신내 반냠도 동행 오야 게임으로 신내 그런 동행 오 게스고 뭐 교르도 거라. 사제 대화 탐지 동해 규례 동해 뭐 전자래 동해 써야 돼 아니 자와듯이 동해 시대지 기회 가는 것도 권나야서로 닝나야서로 심나야서로 빠고나야서 겐세나야서 두 상무 동해래로 두즈도 레로도 두즈도 기단 심이다 tundu도 텐데로 지고 당도 단다 점디데 손에 동해시에서 동해 숨바들이 자와듯이 동해서 디단 텐데로 로마제나 코발레 탈투고요 말아 제가 차와 뒤지 동해에서 디시고요 동해시에 동해고디 이때에서 가고요래요.
Reflecting then on body, and the body is in the nature of dissatisfaction or suffering. We know that there are different levels of suffering, suffering of change, and compound pervasive suffering. But in the context of Buddha Dharma, it's really this third one that we are recognizing, becoming aware of. Because just in terms of the second one, the suffering of change, we can see when we're hungry, we want to fill our stomachs and satiate. But then if we eat too much, that changes into the suffering of change, we're feeling too full. And likewise, with wanting to put on clothes when you're cold, initially that cold abates. But if you go to extremes too much and you put the heater on, you get a headache from too much heat. In short, all of these things are contaminated. All of these, like those in the nature of change, are like, suffering of change. They're all highlighting the contaminated nature of things, because even calm abiding, that nature can change too. Now, the first type of suffering, suffering of suffering, that's easier to recognize: headaches, heartaches, backaches, cancer, all those types of things. Even dogs and cats are showing examples of that. But in terms of what Shakyamuni Buddha is highlighting, it is this third type of suffering that we need to be aware of, because without providing a countermeasure to compound pervasive suffering, the state of liberation from cyclic existence can't be reached. No. Gyuche.
세상에서 예능 통보디 동해외란 시리즈로 차와드지 동해 캡스지 아니 동해시인이 그 자와라 캡대요. 코베네가 탐제를 캡대요.
야.
아니 그 깨지 태나 동해 깨용이 깨마테나 동해 매베 내가 싶어. 그래서 동해제의 깨지 태도 먼저 남산 동해 깨용도. 그래서 그 자와디 차와드지 동해 자와디 대대비인자 아니 싫어지 여배인자 안디가나 깨지 태워다람산 동해 차양한테 가서는 동해 신이 그 자와체가 아니 차와드지 동해스티 티 코드는데 배우다로
The body that we have, the body we have appropriated, is pervaded by that state of being in dissatisfaction and suffering. And that can be pointed to as an exemplification of the cycle of existence. It is in the nature of suffering, meaning that when the body meets certain conditions, it will suffer. And when it doesn't meet the conditions, you will suffer less. But here, as long as that root is there of the compound pervasive nature of suffering, then that result of the body being in dissatisfaction is waiting to happen.
세상 네 코와디는 시자라고 했다. 근데 코 가서 레다 뉴몬 되는 중앙 인자 아니 그 죽라 레 뉴몬 되는 중앙인자 안 데부데 뉴몬 주디 간데스나 베드 뉴버디 가르스는 심두야 뉴버지야 되라 최상 데부 코란레 뉴버디 요 인자 데부디 뉴버디 베데 마 가서 그래 차 싫어지 템포 쉬지데 안 겐스테운도 디 동해디야 세 동해 숙처로 용거요인자 지단 알아서 지 주진으로 좀 마테나나 아니 개개매가 아니 가지고도 세야지 용거요라 와 당아 lula ne na za mewa ani yen yung ne zu da ma de khwa me na nam she di ya wo jin da ji wi ka she de ya ji wi si ma ra ka she la panic den de da paranoia de de yu na ani ta ji wi ya ko na yo ma ra ka de da ji gi na dong de re ja ji gi na ku ma re ji re ni sum re se de sim na la nam do da ngam da na ta ji wi se ya de khau shyo ji ra man cha gi da 춘진도 동의제 제를 매우 내가 당 가지고 있으면 단다 저런 저 말로 깨지는 게 기분이 납사래 게로 가서나 단다 주도라 룰네 나서 시작인데 아니 지 담도 자든데 계제 고마선 단다와 담도 자로 고인데 한테서 마주로 차는 거라 삼로 망고 따는 것이 마주로 차는 거다 저런 저 변한 걸 저러는 저런 단다 주도게라나 나 주도라 jiwa yo lagile ya dawaji ne chirangza chigi tsik dukja ja nga la na nge simde dawa jamada na nga tuksare ya tuksile go mare ra chirang kukpa chirang shingi mido chirang sadore choda mi zamling na mi dukshu dere ra la na chugya nyanga yore ra ina jeze chugya nyanga yore jeze marje yo na tukro jeze di indi genji ane susu binja ra wadende ne naza duksya ra wadzi tunde kowe na ya sema yu chagda ra 야 칼라사단 이거 코피 마스터는 고나 용도로 고나 제가 gen지 태디 남자 동의차 게메디 동의메 내가 주도 제가 네 동의기 자와 차와듯이 동의세 예외 중생기 내단 차는 거를 신고를 에스티라고 한다.
But it's good to know that we're at the behest of compound pervasive suffering. Because actually in terms of the basis, you know, the result, it is a product of karma and disturbing emotions. So really, because the cause are these mistaken mental states or afflictions, then the result is waiting there. On a causal level, the result is waiting there potently. When it meets the condition, suffering increases. But if it doesn't meet the condition, suffering abates. So in that context, you might say, oh, I'm okay. If someone says, how are you? I'm okay, I'm not sick. The weather's fine, and everything's going okay, because they haven't met conditions for that to be another way. But there are others who all the time are in a state of panic, paranoia, or even sounds they hear. They might think it's a spirit or whatever. Mentally, they're always quite perturbed. However, for most of us, like if you were to ask me, how are you, Geshe? I would say, well, I'm fine because my body's good. I have everything I need, you know, because I haven't met the conditions to suffer. So if you ask me, are you happy now? Then I'll say, yeah, I'm happy now. Then, unless, of course, you abuse me, and say, oh, you're really bad, you're the worst person in the world. And if I can't control my body, if you call me a fool, then there's the danger I'll get upset because of my pride. Here, what's happened is you've met with a slight condition and it's changed. So anyway, and also the conditions can be that when our relatives get sick, it affects us. Or we have too much coffee and we get a headache. So then that's just the fact that underlying all of that is compound pervasive suffering. This is what we need to know. Yeah, when Lord Buddha said no suffering, here he was highlighting this third type of compound pervasive suffering.
사전이는 풍부디 여가 인자 네 유친제라 동의제 용의자 다 네다 태고도 써야 돼. 타바디 네다 태는데 로디게나 아니 동의를 태가 타바디 로하다 네다 태고. 디상당고라.
So we need to reflect like that then. If Lord Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha pointed to our 5 contaminated aggregates subject to clinging as being the reality of cyclic existence, then how about getting over it? How about separating from it and striving for liberation? This we need to know. So that's kind of looking at the 3 types of suffering. And for those that study the Lamrim, you can go into the 6 and 8 types that are set forth there.
조디 먼저 풍부디 미자베란시 라 먼저 장어다기 요인자 다다 미다 동에 다야디 동에라 대화다스야디 또 미자와라 장외란시 다와이자 어디요 치질로드데 가서나 그런 게 란시디 미자베 란시레스로 미자레도 알아 먼저 수고마드는 팀워크더라 아니 카다 나다다 나보다 정원안에 팀워크하면 가야면도 팀워크하니 제냐래도 미자레도라 아니 야나 먼저디 장어다기 요라라 장어다올 때는 먼저 동에 먹으시지 직 잡아제야당 마제제야당 도바제야당 콘도제야당 상마지 미장을 장어다니 용구여라 데다 내단데 또 디다고 요라 미자메란시 시고 요라.
When we think about our aggregates, 5 aggregates, their nature is that they are unclean. Oh, sorry, the aggregates is unclean and impure, but we cling to them as being pure. This is a mistaken consciousness. Then, that which is unclean, you cling to it as if it were clean. But it's not clean, is it? If you don't wash your body, it starts to smell. Odors come out of your mouth and your nose and so forth. And, a lot of our states of desires, attachment, pride, aversion come from clinging to things being clean when being, unclean. So clinging to things as clean when in fact they are sullied and unclean. Yes.
Let's
look at the 3rd aspect then of the first noble truth, which is we done impermanent suffering and then empty.
딱바 지고 라 딱바 써야지 그 계지계지 미드 계지계지기다 마징이게 때 가도이 되는 요즘 아주 이지 지고도 와 그럼 다들 짐베처럼 산다고 그래 예 먼저 시체부터 나시 고인들 요 말하는데 로로버지 징기여로 루 딱바 요 말데 먼저 징루 딱바스데 다른 식의 루 단대 루 먼저 찍버려 되기도 와 제 우리가 롱가 tukdunlananda 지금 말해로 상당 두고다 단다 진짜 많이 공부를 단대 류니 상당하다 아주
로거라와
이제 다 찍버려 있다기도 찍버다나 딱바다 차로 맞지 딱바다 차로 제가
그 홍반한다 계지 통보들과
계지 통보들 딱바다 주대체 딱배 동화시 체주진을 미다고라 딱바다 딱보 주 라면 동화 샤워와
Looking then at these attributes. So firstly, clinging to the impermanent body as being permanent, and then clinging to the body as being, which is really unclean as being clean. And then thirdly, when we come to this attribute of emptiness, the mistaken consciousness would, the body is empty of being permanent, kind of unitary and autonomous. And on this first level, mistaking that you are the same person you were this morning because you've changed. And then in some cases, 5 or 6 years ago, people even think they're the same body as that.
지나 딱바다 주 직제로 딱바다 주스나 그 뭐니즈디 딱바 말입니다. 그러와 루디 딱베 동스 딱바 말에서
So that the body is empty of being permanent, but we cling to that, and because its nature is impermanent.
딱바 주어서디 차셰라면도 주고서라 직보스도 먼저 그런 차셰라 메데베 그런 직부로 두스와 그런 먼저 루스도 도와지지 강바달라고 메데니를 지 요상 고르더라
Yeah.
어떤데 지금 따주디 여러 먼저 따주라고 그래야 돼.
Yeah. we also have this gross view of the second attribute of emptiness, that it is a unit, not made up of its various parts. So like when we look at the body, we just think, oh, that's my body, without, making reference to the various parts that go to attribute it.
이나 그 뭐에는 저 류디 차세 망보 때는 줍대도 알아.
The reality of the body is though that it is a compound of many parts assembled.
샤당, 바바당, 루바당, 니 도 듀바당, 와 망고질라 사, 망고질라 때는 줍대도 알아.
Think of all the parts that go to make your body: flesh, bones, blood, sinews, so much.
아니 다 뒤고지 나나 듀진 가져야 봐.
Yeah, and in one vial or one drop of blood, how many subtle particles in there?
그러니까 류지란 신시운데 근데 도저 상는 신나야고요라. 근데 와 류그란 신다연데 와 류데 니 두단데 신운데 중앙시 사추 메롱라데 투웨인데 니 류기 다 주고도 타도 니 샤게 빠고 찍나라 니 듀진 가져요래 차 뒤고 찍나라 듀진 가져요래 도저 상다나 아니 먼저 류딘데 듀틴야 처벌 공부라고 하더라.
듀틴야 처벌 공부. So, and the body's nature, it is good just to reflect on the body's nature, that it is the coming together of four elements: fire, air, earth, and water. So even blood, one tiny bit of blood or flesh, how many subtle subatomic particles make it? So really, when you look at our body, it's just an aggregation of all these particles.
제가 듀딘디게 갖고 있는 구조자 대대 요인자 아니 구조자의 야 폐주를 것이다 마 지구로의 번이 요인 금전이 요인자 공원의 주게란 시메도당 먼저 친구를 메도당 신당 먼저 류루단 지부지게래 봐. 이 다른 사람들 야 듀딘디게 야직 폐회를 거저를 만년배를 거 금전지요. 이 먼저 류디 야직 폐로 거다 배낭 나도 단다 있는다 만년도다. 다 니마마마모 텔라츠고 타마 야하고도 타마타 뭐마네 야 누거로쇼 타마타 탈헬레 데라고다 헬레데 차 되고도 생장시다 좀 주민다 드디다 마타타타 된거 류디다 그나마 냥도도 다스겨라 이 하고나 다 테스트 칼레치고레서
So really, that conglomeration, that collection of particles that makes up the body, it wanes, it changes. So sometimes it's on the up, sometimes it's on the down, sometimes it increases, sometimes it degenerates. Just like flowers and trees come into being. For me, I think I'm on the way down. I'm getting more wrinkles. I know I'm on the way down. I used to have much more power, but now I just like to have a cup of tea and relax. Yeah, I'm so happy just to relax and stay. So all of my subatomic particles are like scattering. They're on the way down. Where they'll go, where those subtle particles will go at the end, I have no idea. Where do you think it's better to let your particles dissolve? So where do you think for you? It's good to think like that. Is the ash of your body going to produce fertilizers for flowers? Yeah, it's good to think on the reality, how on that substantial level we are just like flowers.
지구 사대 아니 라오 사대 규제를 메도 라오라와 먼저 류디 규단 견을 메죠 라오 총어에 튕겨라면서 내가 이제 규단 견을 총어라 이나 먼저 딩이지 지금 뭐 규단 견을 맞대 얘기 단다 거라거라 보스트 거라거라 지금 류디 도와주니 중심 열 아마도 파울드네 맞중심 열어지 지금 아마 파워 열을 라기 류디 도와주니 총어에 산산데 규제를 메도 라오데 same ge zimbadi yorang zimbadi shimba lokwadi yorang.
And then there's a mistaken consciousness that clings to the body, that clings to the fact that, well, you don't think that your body is a product of causes and conditions somehow. You know, this is a mistaken consciousness that you have like this boss, this autonomy, this sense of owning it that sometimes doesn't even think of the parents.
어디 따고 지오랑 따지랑지 이르다 제가 류문에디 따고 말입니다. 그래서 지오 말이 규제 신실 되는 총알에 규제를 매든 말이 규제를 되는 총알에 슬르드니 예 따지랑지 동화사디 차대요랑 어디로.
Yeah, so then the reality of the body then is that it's not permanent, it's impermanent. It is not unitary, it's made up of parts. It is not autonomous because it's a product of causes and conditions. The reality of the characteristics of its empty nature.
다 미다 등이 동화시 체주 숨도성하다 담에디 된다지 마시에지라.
Yeah, so then we've been through these the first three of these four attributes: impermanence, suffering, and emptiness. And next class we'll look at the selfless nature.
다도 봄운에 봄자라 다도 상당하래로.
Yeah, these are really points to meditate on and think about.
류 테마니샤라 다제 류런신라다 류지진이라다 아니 지진이들라 동해란신 미다란신 동해란신 동아들의 계주선입니다. 동해란신 두두 상당하다 곰 오늘 곰도 스자오다.
Yeah, you know, think about the nature of your body, place your mind there. What's its entity? What are its general and specific characteristics? Its impermanence. It is dissatisfaction, lack of comfort, and then within emptiness, these three attributes, impermanent, you know, made up of parts, and then made up of cause and conditions. Good to meditate on that.
Yeah, we should to 류 테마니샤 되게 동해되면 시단가나 자고를 디페 납자 쇼지리도라.
Yeah, just that close placement of mindfulness of body, relating it to the first noble truth, true suffering.
Oi, that is how much.
We'll stop for today, no?
You have question? You have some time. Yeah, you close. Yeah.
Yes.
So we taught that all the suffering is from attachments, and even when we're happy, we return to suffering because of our attachments. Do we ever get moments before we escape samsara where we sit with emptiness, the real like calm contentment, even for a second? Or is that only once?
So your question was that we're suffering because we experience attachments, and our happiness is often changed back to suffering. You're asking us, are there moments before we get out of samsara that are really calm? Is that your question?
Yeah, or do we get to feel emptiness or emptiness? Yeah.
Before getting out of samsara.
Do we not just think about it? Do we get it for a second? Because that,
We have glimpses of it.
yes, or when we start to think that we're feeling content or empty, is that like a trick of samsara? We're only truly felt once we leave them.
Okay. So I guess the 동해 여러분 그 뭔지 어쩌죠? 그때는 동해 연구라. 그냥 그래서 대부 카브리발 대화. 디제는 동해 연구라 레레부. 인 저도. 근데 시피콜로 samsara 마트르 바두. 키치 카식라 셈시데당 엉니 에스라트기 고각 용 세그르베.
네, 용어라서 때때서 거시와다 돈이라 과차와 돈이라 이주체와 내내가 되어야 아니야. 심베 직세직버가가 되나야 되어요야로. 내가 되어 달라 때지 좋아하면서 미직을 편도 제외이나 미페조디 방에 휴식처거든요. 편도 제외이나 뒤내가 그 편도 제외되게 주주 대화로 되지 로직제 로니제 로숨제인데 대야는 연구도 알아.
아, 네.
대 연구를 자자 연구로 밀레 편도 제도 되게 초와디 필링도 유름 되게도 되나 지금 지 추주간라니 지 강의 대회 초와디 유름부 되게도 되나시 대화 야구 제외 초와디 유름부 되게로 This day you're that you go.
Yes, you can have those experiences of peace and calm because you could get like a taste of emptiness or tremendous faith in it. Or when the mind is in a very settled and single-pointed state of concentration, there would be calm and some well-being there or bliss. But also from having helped other people. You know, if people going through tremendous problems and troubles and you lend a hand to them, sometimes you get a really contented feeling of calm just for doing that. And that can last 1, 2, or 3 years. So just as when you're young and you go through tremendous suffering and it makes you feel not good, the reverse can happen. You can feel really good from doing good things.
초원인가라 누가라 초 누가디 주는 거요나 동네디 주는 거요다 초 대화디 나고 유제 카시에 렐로 tortuum다
Yeah, so what's happening is the states of well-being on the one hand and suffering on the other, the conditions remain longer because they're more difficult to reverse. That happens, yeah.
이런 저 개와 밀레 펜도치야 하산한다 펜도치야 아니 직대도 돼 수수문에 배 저와 지도 그런 거 저라고 시대는 아니 주주 메모리 나라 아 당아 뒤뒤당아랑 게 약보체 지역보체 중소 메디나 기부 중소 야고 중소 첨바대 야고도 연구도 돼 가도 상담나 신나라 대화 요한테 연구도 하러 그래서
Yeah, so temporal well-being within samsara. If you have like an exceptional concern for others, like a superior thought for removing their suffering, and you've helped them through benefiting them, then sometimes in the context of this life, that imprint, that memory can be very stable, and it's a good thing to reflect on. That can produce well-being within samsara.
Yes, Philippa, you have a question?
Yeah, Philippa?
Yes, we're talking about what are we going to do with our particles?
Yes.
But my question is, we're always dropping particles.
Yes.
Every day, every minute, we're dropping particles. You know,
Yes.
like for example, all the dirt in the supermarket is skin, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I know, it's radical. But no, we breathe, share the breath, we must share droplets of water anyway. And so the question is, like our bodies must be made up of many particles that I share with all of you, because we must be sharing particles all the time. So that's, I'm asking, that must be correct? Is that right? I mean, how do we do that?
So repeating the question. Geshe mentioned the fact that where are you going to leave your particles, and that they're undergoing this change minute by minute. That's true, but even like you mentioning that in the supermarket we leave skin and so forth, and so with the breath and the water we take and the air we breathe, that's happening all the time, and our bodies are made up of particles, but we must share them with others, right?
Yeah, like now, immediately.
Yeah. Then Kishla Kabriwala they tramor wadi. Kasigla ya jo yang ma jo yang drup yang nyam di morang ko tene yang pena anzolegi they tramor denzo kadiyan mishemba dang nyam du penzen share gor wadi. Karesana anzo utang chutong entonces chique tende ¿verdad? Mi siempre tan raro. Cadena de ¿verdad? Ya yo yana mado yana.
먼저 데 류기 뒤전도 들어와. 네지 먼저 따들 류니 지 따하도 따 요구로. 따들 류니 지거더라.
Yeah.
근데 따마 요구도. 네. 너구는 너도.
Yeah.
세모타 유야. 미그 통하는데도 아니 타고 수부들도 류고 타고 사도더라.
Yes, that's completely correct. We lose blood. These other substances come out of the body like nails, and it will all of this can be the changing and to and froing of these subatomic particles.
예,
Yeah, they're always doing that morphing.
저 뉴딘라 딩자데 코란라야 누가 먼저 릭드인시가 낭바이나 릭드인도 님도 데 릭미도 파사로 다데레
I see. So therefore, if we look at it from a Buddhist perspective, the particles that are of a like class stay together, and those that are not separate. As in, they condense and then they scatter. So the particles that are of similar class attract each other, and those that are not.
현재 단다 먼저 주요와 주그 빡빡디 슉 저거게더라
Yeah,
먼저 자갈 뭐 타야래 먼저 주 빡빡 통도
yeah,
주 빡빡디 그런 간장 그런 빡빡 둘러 한거 비우는 비셔더라
yeah.
주 그런 빡빡 통고 마사라
Oh, there.
먼저 밀라 지나시 먼저 빡빡디 비고스 먼저 통고하면 주기 먼저 빡빡 비우 통고했어요 예,
It is said that just like snakes shed their skin, like taking off your shoes, the snakes do not see or are not aware of them shedding their skin. We can see snakes shed their skin. Just like that, it is said that humans shed their own skin, and snakes might see us do it, but we don't see ourselves do it.
상상을 찍도디 루디 두어직도디 바고도 서버라지든 바고 저우제 가도로 인사를 tingu nga 상상 tinge로 상상을 바고디 나 상상을 뭐 사실은 바고랑 비교도 이 바고도 말에 루나시기 수부 찾는 바고 비야지 요새
So sometimes I see my own skin and I realize there's a change undergoing with the skin, but not at a growth level. We also shedding skin like a snake.
년아 되어지나가 여러 년아 주랑 바고 통고 말에 지나시 미랑 바고 통고 말에 지나시 수승고 마토는 매고 말해서 수수 류기 차시 마토는 매고 망고 열어서
I've heard this in some like a poetry. The snake doesn't see it shedding its own skin. Similarly, humans do not see themselves shedding their own skin. But the fact that something is not seen doesn't negate it happening. And there are many things that are not seen that are the case.
Oh yeah, that is how.
We'll stop.
31, talking about. Due to the marvelous